All right, Bigfoot Society podcast. We have the pleasure of talking to my friend Carrick tonight. Uh, Carrick, you are from the New England area, New Hampshire, correct?
Yes, indeed.
Awesome. And you have done a lot of things. And I want to say, because you're still, you know, you're not as old as me, and well, we're not as old as the other guys, but
That's true.
you've done documentaries. You have your YouTube channel, which is amazing, Crash Course Cryptozoology, correct?
Correct.
You've got a lot going on. What else would you want the audience to know about yourself?
Well, luckily, I was thinking about this today, more into really doing boots on the ground stuff more often, which is
Mm,
so interesting because I recall a podcast that I was on where someone asked me in the comments, like the live stream comments, what expeditions have you been on? And I was like, oh, I've been on like one. But now I've been on, roughly four of them. So that's a bit of a better answer, I think.
that's awesome. So you had the whole situation where it was like you were making content and people kept being like, Carrick, do this. Carrick, come and do this with us. Because I'm
Well,
experienced that right now, kind of. But
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
and that's been such a fascinating part of this because
Okay.
I mean, I never expected any of that.
Hmm.
Never,
Mm.
never something. I figured that the channel, when I created it back in 2017, would maybe get 200 subscribers, and that would be that, and that would be
Okay.
fine. And now here I am, and I'm producing documentaries, and I've got a pretty fastly growing audience, which has been really strange because it becomes more difficult to manage that kind of thing. I can't reply to every comment now, which is something that I miss doing. But
True. True.
yeah, it's been really incredible. It's been unprecedentedly incredible.
Let's even turn things back a little bit further. So, what was it that got you into cryptozoology to begin with?
Hmm. So I usually begin by saying I was kind of into it when I was, well, as far back as I can remember, but more superficially. So I liked, Scooby Doo and stuff like that.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So, I was familiar with, like, Bigfoot, Loch Ness monster, stuff like that. What I think really propelled me into it in a serious manner was an experience that I had in Lineborough, New Hampshire, which is
Oh, sure.
about 20 minutes from Nashua or so.
Yep.
And
Yep.
that was what I would say would fit the bill for a Sasquatch sighting. Um,
Mm.
what I saw, I describe as a very tall, kind of stocky, dark figure standing behind this fallen birch tree, which was significant to me because there aren't many birch trees on that property. So when you see one, you
Okay.
remember where it is.
Mm.
And it, I don't know if it was looking at me. I got the impression that it was because we were both very still for about 10 seconds. And it turned to its right and walked away. And that's one thing that I thought was so insane about it because I spent so much time mulling over, did I see a black bear? Did I see a black bear? Did I see a black bear? And everything about it could have been a black bear except for the fact that I could see its knees coming up and down. And
Okay. Yeah.
yeah, so it's like, man, that couldn't have been a black bear. Um, what I think is really interesting too is that from the front, it looked very much like the Provo Canyon footage. But as it walked
Oh,
away,
really?
I only realized this years later, it looked almost exactly like Patty when she's facing away from the camera.
Oh, my goodness.
The same kind of
Yikes.
sloping back shape with the trapezius muscles and the kind of weird, almost angular shape of the head from the back.
Wow.
I mean, nearly exact. It was maybe a bit bulkier or wide, but it was
Okay.
it was almost the same exact image. And I had
Oh,
other
my
things happen
goodness.
on that property. I had a particular experience where I had a brick thrown at me, where we were.
Really?
Yeah, this all happened when I was quite young, actually,
I
and
was
we
going
were.
to ask. Yeah.
Yeah, so that setting was in fourth grade, and I think this happened in
Oh,
fifth.
man.
So about 2 years later, we'll say, maybe 1.5 years later, me and my friends were throwing, rocks down this embankment because we wanted to see who could throw rocks the furthest. And I found
Hmm.
this brick on the ground, and I thought to myself, "Oh, how impressive would it be if I threw this brick all the way down?" Of course, it's a
Right.
brick. I'm a sixth grader, so I threw it, and it like tumbled the way down. Very not impressive. So
Okay.
we go back to the house, and maybe two steps, not very long, I hear a bang. We all heard that, and we looked, and the brick's been thrown back up the embankment, and it's cracked in half on a rock.
Dude, that's nuts.
Yeah, yeah. And I sat there, you know, that's about 100 feet down to the forest below, and it's all just rock. So it's not like a cliff or anything, but it's pretty hard to traverse that because it's thick down there too. About halfway down, you get the thick foliage. So,
Oh my goodness.
and we had waited for it to hit the floor. So something on the forest floor, about 100 feet down, picked that brick up and lobbed it back. So either Arnold Schwarzenegger was down there, or it was what you might call a Sasquatch. So yeah,
That's awesome. Dude, Lineborough, is that by New Boston at all? Or like I'm trying to like you said it's near Nashua.
it's
'Cause,
about
like
20 minutes from Nashua. Do you know where Wilton is?
I'm gonna actually look it up real quick.
Go for it.
Uh
I can give
yeah,
you the
yeah, yeah.
road this happened on, Cram Hill Road.
Is it Lindaborough?
It's pronounced a few different ways. I've heard Lindyborough.
Okay.
Some people mistakenly say Lindenborough, but most pronounced it
Oh
Lime.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's kind of between Keene and Nashua.
Yeah, yeah.
Totally.
It's closer than,
Yeah, totally.
yeah,
Okay. Yeah. That's
yeah.
awesome.
I mean, an array of fascinating experiences there.
Yeah.
That was really what kind of propelled me, I think, as I got older and kind of had an understanding of what academia was. And I was sitting there and just thinking, like, man, this happened. This happened. The only catalogs I can find of these things are these kind of fringe areas of the internet. Because at the time, we were still, I think, very much before the massive creative expansion that we're seeing right now. This was before, Small Town Monsters. This was before the Bigfoot Society podcast. This was before any of that.
That's true. That is true. So this is an interesting question. What year are you imagining when you think of that?
Well, let's see. Third or fourth grade, it was probably around maybe between 2008 and 2009, I would say.
I shouldn't ask that question. I was like, oh, this is going to be horrifying. Okay, cool. That's awesome. Yeah, everyone was born in the early 80s like me. No, so I grew up in Northfield, which is it's just south of Winchester, New Hampshire. So it's like that north central Mass. And man, you go in those back roads and like I wasn't into Bigfoot when I was out in Massachusetts. I'm out in Iowa now, but it's like, man, there were some times when you'd be like, it was either something like that or it was a mountain lion. Something was watching you. You just have that feeling when you're in the woods sometimes, and was there a certain age where you realized that what you had experienced was not something that everyone experiences, or that it was actually a Bigfoot? When did you make that realization?
I think I had a hard time realizing that, actually.
Okay.
I think that for a while as a kid, you just thought like, wow, how cool is it that happened? So that went till about sixth grade. And then when I got into like middle school, of course, you have a ton of other problems in middle school.
Sure.
And you get, what would it have been? I think in my last 2 years of high school, I refound this box, and I've still got this box, and it just has, well, it actually had these photos in it. And these are all just snippets of cryptozoology photos. So like
nice.
practices up there, basically everything you can think of except for the Patterson film.
Okay.
And I think I was digging through it and just thought to myself, like, I would love to get back into this. And I did. And after that is when I spent roughly a year trying to figure out what it was that I saw. Because I also understood at that point that there was a lot of confirmation bias that could go into that kind of event. And so I sketched it a few times. I tried my best to think, okay, from what angle could a bear look like that? And by the end of roughly that year, I couldn't get past the knees. There was no way around that. There was absolutely no way around it. I actually also went back to that site not too long after the sighting and with a tape measure, and I measured up to the tree where it was. And it was
cool.
So it was a rather tall individual, whatever it was. And I think that was when it hit me, and I was sitting there and, I had again, greater knowledge of academia and, what it means to kind of live in a world where things are real, let's say.
Yeah.
And, realized that this was something that I have been convinced is real, and it's not cataloged. This is not on record. That was what was fascinating to me, was I had experienced something that wasn't only unusual, but it was highly suggestive of something that is so unusual that it's not even considered real.
Wow, that is so cool, dude.
Yeah, it
Man.
was a strange realization, that one.
Oh,
Yeah.
that would just knocked me back for a bit. Like, just like, oh, that thing in that film, Patterson Gimlin film, I saw that thing. Like, I think I would just be like, I
Yeah.
need to sit down for a bit,
Yeah.
chill out, and process this for a while. Um, when was it that so you go from the process of like experiencing it, probably starting to research more into it? What was the point where you're like, I want to start making, documentaries and films about this
Yeah,
subject?
right. Well, I had always loved cryptozoology documentaries. I mean,
Okay.
I have this one series that I have on DVD called Bigfoot Lives, and it's
Hmm.
unfortunately by Tom Biscardi, who's kind of a controversial figure. But the documentaries themselves involve other people who are really quite fascinating, and there's some really
Okay.
cool things in a lot of them. And I have like On the Trail of Champ by Small Town Monsters, and
Totally.
so growing and Monster Quest obviously as well. Monster
Oh,
Quest
for
was
sure. Yeah.
that and In Search
Yeah.
of. So with all of that, I think that after I started my channel and had it going for maybe a year or two, I sat there and I was like, I've got a camera.
Mm-hmm.
Got a camera. I do videos. I've been doing videos for a long time at that point, but not on cryptozoology. That was rather new. But
Okay.
I was a very experienced video editor and I was a very experienced graphic designer. And
Mm.
I thought to myself, well, so I can do promo material and I can do making this thing and putting it together. So why
Yeah.
not? And my first attempt was one called The Wood Ape, which is kind of still in progress. Unfortunately, a lot of the footage got lost when a computer broke on me during
Oh,
it.
that's the worst. I hate that crap. Yeah, dude.
I
Oh,
know.
that's terrible.
I know. So I've
Yeah.
got like the first chapter of it done, and that's all that I've
Oh
had.
man. Okay. Yep.
Um, but I think that once I realized that that was going to take a while is when I got into like things like Release the Bodette film, because
Mm.
I think one thing I found that I like very much is covering subjects that are not covered very often.
Love
Um,
it.
so something like Release the Bodette film, in most champ media, the Bodette film is a footnote and not much else. And I thought, you know, even if it is only worthy of being a footnote in the state that it's in right now, this is a footnote that you could make an hour and a half documentary on. And that's what I did. So that was a great experience, I think, because it was so cool that was the first time I ever left New England, was going to the New York side of Lake Champlain.
Oh wow. And how old were you, man?
That was just last year.
That's the
So
first dude. I love that. I wish oh man, hats off to you, brother.
yeah, thank
So
you.
that's just really cool. So you had never gone outside of like the furthest you've been is like Vermont and Mass until last year.
Yeah. I don't
That is
do a lot
so
of
New
traveling outside.
Englander. I love it, dude.
Yeah, it
Oh, I
was
love it
so
so
interesting.
much.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
was great. It was a whole new experience, and that was really awesome. And that's another reason I'm doing like the Pukwudgie documentary, because again, Pukwudgie
totally.
are mostly a footnote, and I seem to have this pattern where I'm fascinated by footnotes because it
Mm,
seems like so many footnotes are untapped gold mines of information. And that's ultimately, I think, my passion with this is I'm really all about education. I It's so
hmm.
funny. I was talking with somebody last night about doing, like maybe members only content on the channel. And I just can't get myself to do it because
Yeah.
one thing that I don't like about I love National Geographic. I hate
Right.
that I have to pay to read their things.
Yeah, I get it, dude. Yeah.
So I think about that and I'm like, there's no way I could make anybody pay for this stuff. There's just no way.
Yeah.
So
But on the other hand, you know, uh, the lights don't turn themselves on. So unless you're,
yeah,
but
see, I have a problem
it's
with
only on YouTube, right? Your podcast is only on YouTube.
It is, yeah.
So
I tried to get
yeah.
Spotify to work at one point, and I was like a 90-year-old man trying to do that. So I'm going to try
Oh
it again,
snap.
see if I can.
You could always do Anchor. You could do Anchor, and that's
Mm.
free.
Yeah, I've heard that that's a
Um,
good platform for that.
you need to like really research it out, and because there's something in the terms where they like can use your content. So do your due
I see.
diligence about that. But yeah, I get that, dude. That's an interesting discussion to have internally when you go down that
It
road for
is.
sure.
Yeah.
Do you mind talking about we kind of glazed over it. What's the importance of the Bodette film and what does that entail? Like what is that involved with?
Right.
what cryptid, you know?
Well, okay, so that's the Bodette film refers to this piece of footage shot in 2005 or six. There's differing sources on that, but I think most say six actually, by these two fishermen, Dick Affolter and Peter Bodette, who are stepfather and stepson, I think, and they're from New York, and they were fishing out near the southernmost mouth of the Ausable River, which feeds directly into Lake Champlain. So that mouth is on Lake Champlain, which
Right.
is the site that we went to when we went to New York. And there's the incident that Affolter and Bodette describe is that there's this large aquatic animal that fits the bill for what you would call champ, which is, you know, kind of like America's Loch Ness Monster in Lake Champlain.
Exactly.
And there's actually this scrapped transcript that was going to be on a show about the Bodette film that Joseph Citro was able to recover, and I got to use it in the documentary. And it's
No way.
yeah,
Oh, that's cool.
So the great thing about that is the problem with the Bodette film is centered around the privacy problem, because for whatever reason the film got sold to a lawyer in New Jersey, Scott Shagan. We don't know why. A lot of sources said that there was some kind of divorce settlement and this was part of the payment. And it hasn't been viewed publicly since. There have been some people who've been under contract to see it but can't talk about it. One of those people was William Draginis, may he rest in peace. And he was Scott Mardis's research partner.
Okay.
And he got to see the Bodette film. I was able to include his testimony in there too, because Scott had written down all of what William Draginis had said about it. So there was that. We were able to interview an anonymous person who I couldn't say their name in the film, but could confirm that this was somebody who was able to see the footage, private viewing, and talked about what they saw. Draginis likened it to the Luxembourg plesiosaur skeleton, which is a type of plesiosaur that has a particularly kind of flat bill-like face and forward-facing eyes.
Oh man.
Yeah, so I thought that was interesting because he said specifically that one. Whereas the other person leaned much more towards the giant turtle theory, where they said that there was a carapace, a shell that could be seen. At one point in the footage, something dives and you can see an alligator-like tail come up out of the water and come back down. Which is hard because the footage that we have available is only about 3 seconds. It's more than that of the actual footage, but the creature, whatever it is, the subject, is in frame for only about 3 seconds maximum. It's very small, but that's the thing, is it's such a small frame of time, but it's so detailed. It is so. I mean, I remember when I first saw it thinking that could be the Patterson-Gimlin film of lake monsters.
That is so cool. Yeah, that's really cool, man.
There's different analyses. One that fascinates me is when it turns what I guess you'd call its head to its right, there's a changing in lighting at the front of the face, and the lower part of the face seems to extend for just about 2 frames. And we looked at that, and people looked at that, and they thought that is the opening of a mouth. And it seems like that, where it kind of turns, goes like this, and then comes back down again. So, you know, that's an incredible bit of detail, because that suggests that the object is animate and is actually alive.
Yeah.
There are some theories as to how exactly this could have been hoaxed. One theory by Dick Rayner, who's a Loch Ness researcher, is that this is actually the reflection of an apparatus on the boat in the water to make it look as though it's underwater. The size of the boat might call that into question, but it's certainly not impossible. And this was aired on ABC. Those 3 seconds were aired on ABC News.
Okay.
That's kind of the reason that it's so interesting that we have this transcript of them talking about it, because they didn't get to say these things in the ABC footage. They didn't really use a whole lot of material, I think, because it wasn't taken seriously. But in the transcript, Bodette and Affolter, talk about Affolter being concerned at one point that it was going to ram the boat because it was coming quite fast at them, and it would, dive under and come back up and do the same thing. And there's a part where, the head comes above the water and you could see the sun glinting off the eye, which is something that our anonymous witness said as well. So
really,
yeah. So it's a really fascinating case, and
that's awesome. Where can people watch this?
So this used to be on YouTube, but it actually will be again by the end of the year, because I would like to make it as available as possible, but I'd also like to make some of the money back from it. So
understandable. Yep.
Yeah. So we had a round of DVDs, 10 of them that are out now. But in August, when I go to the Lake Champlain Champ Festival, we're going to restock
Okay.
Maybe around like 15 to 20 DVDs is what I
Oh,
imagine.
that's cool. That's
Yeah.
cool.
So those will be available on there. And if there's any left over, they'll be available online.
Okay, cool. Very cool. So you've done that film.
Hmm.
You've got a new one coming out pretty
Yeah.
low about Lone Pine, right?
Yes. Yeah. So this is part of a series I'm doing of much shorter documentaries, about 20
Okay.
minutes, 15
Okay.
to usually because the subject is kind of small enough to cover in that frame of time. The first one I did was called Remembering the Iceman, which is about the Minnesota Iceman. It covers
Oh yeah, sure.
the general case, but talks to people who, decades ago now were able to see the original Iceman when they were kids. So it's kind of this weird nostalgic documentary.
Hmm.
Um, the Legend of Lone Pine, which is the one coming out, I think in what, 4 days
I
now?
think so, yeah.
Yeah, 4 days, which is wow, it's crazy. That's one that I want to do that for years. And I have because, well, I don't want to give too much away. Um,
Yeah,
it-
don't give any twist away or anything.
right. I will say, in terms of specifically the case of the Lone Pine Mountain Devil, this is going to be a landmark one. Which is not to toot
Whoa.
my own horn because it's a relatively small case as well. So it's not like I'm cracking the code on Nessie here or something.
So when I hear Mountain Devil, I think Ape Canyon. Is this a Bigfoot
Yes.
thing or not a Bigfoot
No,
thing?
actually, this is something
This
very
is.
different. Most people
Okay.
associate this with a saurian. So the typical
Hmm.
image of the Lone Pine Mountain Devil tends to be, let's say, a velociraptor, like a feathered velociraptor,
Oh wow, really?
or a maniraptor,
Yikes.
something like that. Yeah.
Okay.
And there's allegedly historical accounts talking about these feathered winged demons around Lone Pine. A lot of the depictions talk about it being multi-winged, which is usually where the idea of the saurian comes
Hmm.
from. Look at
Okay.
microraptors, velociraptors. They have, these wing-like extensions on their arms, but also on their ankles. And so if somebody were to see that, they would think, oh, it has 4 wings. It's multi-winged. Not exactly the correct terminology, but visually speaking, that's what it looks like. So
Wow.
yeah, so that'll be a really interesting one. I think people will really like that one.
I'm pumped to see. That's going to be on your YouTube channel, right?
Yeah, all the short ones
Okay.
are free to watch on my YouTube. Yeah.
Awesome. That is cool. How did you get I was driving out this weekend and I'm a friend with Alex Petikoff, and then I saw his like live thing come on and you guys were like hanging out, which I thought was the coolest thing ever. One,
Yeah.
how many times do you get to see a live stream of dudes out squatching? Like that never happens. That was really cool content. But
Yeah.
like when did you first start hanging out with Alex? How did that friendship start?
Yeah, that's so interesting because one of my favorite parts of that live stream was someone saying that the two of us seemed like old friends, and it dawned
Mhm.
on us both that it's like, yeah, we've been friends for about 4 years now, I think.
Oh wow, okay.
Maybe more, because I think we talked a bit in 2016, but no, it was early 2017 that we did, I think. So close to 4 years, maybe 5 years if you count that. But so we talked first, I think, because I had seen him briefly. I might get this timeline wrong. I think I had seen him briefly at the 2018 Cryptozoology Conference. And before
Cool.
that,
Yeah.
times just having questions about Bigfoot and things like that.
Awesome.
Eventually, I interviewed him for the Wood Ape, which is one of the segments that was destroyed, unfortunately.
Oh no. Oh,
I
that
know,
sucks,
so I
man.
have to refilm that one at some point.
Oh, that's
I know,
terrible, dude.
So unlucky, so unlucky.
Well,
Yeah, the only footage I have from that chapter is like a still shot of a campfire for about 10 minutes and nothing happens. So
there you
it's
go.
not incredibly usable, that one. So
Yeah.
but yeah, I think when we started talking more was around 2019.
Okay.
And maybe no, 2020 it was. More into 2020, maybe February or January of 2020.
That would make sense because it was pretty easy to talk to people last year because they weren't out doing anything. That's why I started doing this. So.
People were very accessible. Yeah.
That's why Alex started his thing, to be honest. But from what he said, you're also involved with the Pine State Phantoms film, right? Is that correct?
Yeah. Well, I don't work with the researcher anymore, but he's a great researcher, so I recommend people check out his stuff. And Pine State Phantoms was an interesting experience because I'm not a very paranormal oriented person. And that isn't to say that I am choosing a camp in which there is no room for the paranormal. I fully admit that it is not my area of expertise, and there are way better people to talk to than me about that. Part of it because I just can't handle it that well. It's too existential for my liking. So
Sure.
it's
Sure.
something that I touch, leave for a bit, then touch again, usually.
I gotcha. Yeah, I'm the same way. There's certain interviews I won't do
Yeah.
because I'm to the feeling of that if you open yourself up to certain things, they can affect you or they can follow you. And
right. And even in a sense of metaphorically, as opposed to literally, that could easily be the case, because the most I'll say in the paranormal is there is something weird going on, and I have no idea what it is.
It's something, dude.
I can't think of a single thing that even makes sense for all of it, but there is something very strange. I at least am convinced of that, especially I would say after Pine State Phantoms, because there were a few strange occurrences at Pine State Phantoms filming location that I'm still kind of not. I lost sleep over one of them. That was it's in the documentary. It's while we're sitting there talking about this lamp, which is for some reason particularly cold in the house, and it was interesting because you could put your hand about 3 inches away from the lamp and feel the coldness. And we would go to other areas of the house that had metal and do the same thing. And we're like, you can't feel this is cold unless you're about a centimeter away from it. So this is like radiating.
Wow.
Yeah. And during us talking about that, something comes up in the audio that we did not hear with the naked ear. And it sounds like someone screaming bloody murder.
Yep. Nope. That's a big noper for me, dude.
No, I lost sleep.
Totally.
2 or 3 nights where I had trouble sleeping after Nate, who's the director of that film, sent me that. That was There's an example of why I don't get into it, because it's not that I don't think it's worth talking about. I just can't handle it. I really can't. So
totally get it, dude.
So Pine State Phantoms was very interesting. Yeah.
Let's get into. Do you mind if we get into a few questions?
Yes, of course.
All right, cool. My buddy Greg from All the Weird from the Patreon says, "What is your favorite Canadian cryptid tale?"
Ooh, Canadian cryptid tale. That's interesting. I'm a big fan of the Vancouver Island reports, because it's such an unlikely area. It's a small island essentially, but there's so many sightings of Sasquatch there, and there's tons of Bindernagel covered, the Alert Bay vocalizations, and if that were to be legitimate, that would mean that essentially all you would have to do to really find one of these things is maybe spend a year camping out on Vancouver Island. And that would be it, which no one wants to do, to be fair. But I would certainly love to do that if I had the resources to. So,
I mean, I would totally be all about that as well.
Yeah.
I am perfect. I mean, well, you almost think, could we handle a year being outside of civilization in a year? I've seen YouTube videos of dudes that have done it. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But
well,
who knows?
Comes down to kind of one of my main philosophies with Sasquatch particularly, which is, well, if we're studying a thing that is at least like a primate, we have to look to what we know about primate studies. And I referenced Dian Fossey a lot.
Okay. Yep.
For I think close to a year, if not more. And she found so many fascinating things that really actually relate to Sasquatch a lot. One of which is the question of how can these big things hide so well? Let's say Vancouver Island, such a small place. How has no one found these things? Here's something fascinating about Dian Fossey. Her team and her, when they first arrived in Africa to observe gorillas, they were there for 2 weeks. Well, they were there for more than 2 weeks, but for the first 2 weeks, they would find sign of gorilla everywhere, but they never saw one. Even
That's
though they
nuts.
They were right near them in the bush, because they could hear them and they could see sign of them, but they never laid eyes on one. And when they finally did, it's because it walked right out of the bushes towards them. So,
and it was like right there. Oh, that's awesome.
And gorillas are massive. So these are animals that are like, if they do not want you to see them, you're not going to see them. And that's that. So
wow.
In terms of hiding on Vancouver Island, it's like, if you had a small enough population, absolutely, there'd be no problem with that.
That's crazy, dude.
Yeah.
I love it. Eli Watson asks, what is your most anticipated upcoming project that you're working on?
It's a tough one. I'm very excited about Legend of Lone Pine because that's been a dream of mine for
Awesome.
about 3 years. Mainly because there was this person I tried to interview for it who was always very busy, and we messaged on Twitter maybe about 3 times a year to try and convene. And eventually I ended up saying, you know what? I've only got like 3 questions, so let's just do it here. And they were like, oh, well, okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. That's awesome.
So Legend of Lone Pine's a big one. I think that in terms of like a feature length project, I'm very excited about Wildman of the Wampanoag, but I think the one I'm most excited for is probably Legend of the Marlboro Monkey.
I totally forget how many you have. So much stuff going on. I forget.
I know. Save, please.
Yeah. Yeah, those are 2 we haven't. Well, Wild Man of the Wampanoag. Right. Explain what that's about.
So that's a documentary that focuses on pukwudgies, but
exactly
kind of discusses other little people sightings around the continent and the world as well.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so it's looking to be pretty expansive, which is going to be a challenge, but I'm going to try and take it on myself anyway.
Wow.
Legend of the Marlboro Monkey is one that is this one is exciting to me because it isn't, well, I think because as someone who is an editor and a graphic designer especially, we're shooting the film entirely in the style of a 1960s to 1970s cryptozoology documentary.
That is so cool.
So it's low quality looking. There's some VHS type static. It's got this yellow tint to it. It's a box shape, widescreen.
Oh man.
Yeah, and there's audio filters I'm putting it through, so all the audio sounds kind of radio-esque. So I think I'm excited for that one, particularly because of that, because that is just such. I love doing things like that. I really do.
That is really cool. I want to get more into that. I also want to make sure that Alex asks, "Are you a pukwudgie?"
Am I a pukwudgie?
Yeah.
You shouldn't ask questions you don't want the answer to.
That's true. Now you're gonna like haunt him with the lights forever. Whatever.
I am fiery arrows. I'm gonna leave.
That's true.
Moss at his door. Yeah.
It's game over.
It's game over. Exactly.
So the Marlboro Monkey, I'm super excited for because that's more over by the Swansea Keene area, correct?
Yes. Yeah. Which is the Legend of the Marlboro Monkey production is what has made me understand what convinces people of synchronicity.
Ooh.
It's been a lot of weird things. So
okay.
It started, well, for one thing, the Marlboro Monkey legend itself is a hidden treasure that I accidentally tripped on.
I love this.
Someone else tripped on it on the same day. And that's weird to me. So what happened was I go to university here in Keene, and I was sitting there and I was like, there's got to be some place in Walmart.
Oh, are you in Keene right now?
I am. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. I used to work in Keene. So.
Oh, wow. Well,
I used to work at the Walgreens in Keene. So.
Oh, great. Yeah, I've been there.
Northfield is like 20-25 minutes south, right?
Yeah.
Or 15-20 minutes, cool. Whatever. But yeah.
It's a small world, Jeremiah.
It is. Yeah, totally. But go ahead.
But so I looked up on the BFRO reports anything for Cheshire County, and I found one
good.
from Marlboro that said this couple, I think back in the early 2000s, had heard what sounded very much like the Snohomish County Bigfoot recordings.
Ooh.
And I thought that was very interesting. So I walked up there, 2-hour walk one way. So I walked for about 4 hours that day, went up to Cooper Hill, and was only up there for about half an hour. This is another weird thing. I was only up there for about an hour and a half. Sorry, my bad. Played chimpanzee vocalizations and those sounds.
Yes.
When I played those sounds, I waited for half an hour and nothing happened.
Okay.
I played the chimpanzee sounds, and about half an hour later, most surreal, clearest sound of wood on wood ever.
Wow.
I mean, and it lasted for about 3 to 5 minutes.
Super knock, you saying? Super wood knock?
I don't know what else to call it, because it wasn't an axe. And the only thing that I could think of was maybe it was people stacking wood, because it's, wood. But when I listened to it, I've realized that you don't have like that.
Okay. Yeah.
Throw it. It's like.
Yep.
Yeah. It's like, that's not
exactly
one going like that with wood. They're not doing that. So, I remember so distinctly too the feeling that I got, because I remembered in one of the Bigfoot Liz films that I was talking about earlier, they're interviewing somebody who was talking about a vocalization they heard that they missed because they didn't have their audio recorder on. They turned it on immediately afterwards, shot up into the air, nothing. They missed it. And I was thinking that because I heard one knock and I turned on my phone, got the audio recorder app on, and I thought to myself, I missed it. I missed it. I missed it. Held it up in the air for about 10 seconds. Bam, bam. And I got about 3 minutes of that.
That's so good.
Yeah. And so that was crazy. I uploaded that the next day. And
it's on your YouTube. Yeah.
And someone reached out to me and said, I just today was searching for wood knocking in Marlboro, the day that I uploaded.
Oh, man.
And I live about 5 minutes from your research location. And we have a property where we're hearing wood knocking pretty consistently during the warm seasons, usually between 2 and 3 in the morning. So we got to, I visited them the next time that I was up there filming for Marlboro Monkey. And Alexander, I also met them. The nicest people you've ever met in your life. I mean, we had, they gave breakfast the next day after camping. So that was.
Oh, no way. Dude, that's totally New Englander thing. I love it.
I know. Well, it's funny because they're from the Midwest, actually. They're not true New Englanders. They're from the Midwest. They just moved here.
Oh, okay. So it is a Midwest thing too, but whatever. But
yeah. It's so funny. They talk about how, it's so cool. But unfortunately, I can't.
Good for them.
Names. They want to remain anonymous.
Well, we wouldn't want you to, but I totally get it. Yeah.
And I mean, it was just so, what are the odds that and I'm not asking that rhetorically, I'm asking genuinely, what are the odds that I went up there the day that those sounds happened, in particularly the hour and a half time frame that they were going to happen, perfectly to be right there for it. And less than 5 minutes from me, chances are that just a few nights earlier, the same thing was happening. And when I upload the video, happens to be the day that the husband decided to look up wood knocking in Marlboro.
It's bonkers, dude.
Yeah. Had he looked that up a day earlier, none of this would have ever happened. And this is all the crazy thing. I tell Alexander about this after my first trip. And he tells me, dude, there's a story called the Marlboro Monkey. And I was like, you're kidding me. And he's like, no, John Horrigan, before the internet was kind of big on the cryptozoology scene, cataloged these reports. And one of them he called the Marlboro Monkey. And this one was the reports, or a report of a small orangutan colored monkey looking thing peeking up from trees in the woods, almost as though it was playing hide and seek with the witnesses. And they called it the Marlboro Monkey. So the legend of the Marlboro Monkey feels so monumentous to me, even though it's so small scale, because it really is, I took a step east instead of west, and I found something that most people don't know is even a case. So it feels almost Indiana Jones-esque in that way. And so I think that's why I'm so excited too, because it's just one of the most profound experiences in my research path so far.
So it's not like you were just in a library and you stumbled upon an old newspaper. It's like,
no,
there's a website involved. There's you researching. There's a dude looking on YouTube. And then there's another guy like, oh yeah, did you like, there's a lot of synchronicities. That's awesome, dude.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
That's made it quite an interesting experience for sure.
What is that a later this year thing, or however long it takes to put together thing? Or
well, luckily, it being in the style of a 1960s or 70s documentary, the editing won't be that heavy.
Sure.
I'm mostly done filming. I need to interview 2 people and that's it.
Okay, cool.
So, I'm hoping to have that done soon, and that should put a release. I don't like putting dates on things anymore because that actually drops the quality of the original cut of release of what I'd filmed, because I did that.
Sure.
So I'll say late spring, early summer is what I'll say.
Cool.
Right.
Yeah. I think something like that, it's like, doesn't really matter how long it takes you to do it, as long as it gets out eventually.
Right.
Because I've talked to dudes that are like, I have footage from 10 years ago and I still haven't done anything. I'm like,
right.
Me. But like, so, but I mean, I'm pumped for that to come out, just because like I'm familiar with growing up in that area, and like that's going to be awesome, because I'm sure there's like, obviously Marlboro, that's around the Mount Monadnock area, correct?
You can see it from Marlboro.
Yes. Right. Yeah. But oh man, have you ever been to Warwick, Massachusetts?
I've heard of the place and never been, honestly.
That place is wild, dude. You
I've
can
heard
go
it's
out
wild.
there and it's like we used to go animal tracking out there because my dad was a pretty hardcore naturalist.
Mm,
And man, we would see like moose and all sorts of tracks out there and like
yeah,
some weird stuff. And it's like, but you know,
right.
he's he's not so much into that, so he's going to look at stuff a different viewpoint. You know how it is, right? But
Yes, yeah, yeah.
anyways, I want to let me make sure. Okay, I got all the questions there. I do have a thing where I like to go through a certain set of questions
Sure.
with each guest because it's kind of turned into like an interesting thing
Mm.
because everyone has their own different viewpoint on stuff. But okay, so in your viewpoint, what do you believe Bigfoot is?
I'm convinced that we're dealing with a great ape. Now,
Okay,
I don't want to discount the stranger reports.
sure.
So I don't. I say I don't know what to do with those. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not that I don't include them, it's that I have no idea how I could possibly even begin to categorize them.
Yep.
So we might need to. An example, I suppose, of how I think of that might be, well, there are tons of paranormal reports that involve, let's say, owls or wolves, completely normal animals that we know are biologically real. So maybe when we have something like a paranormal Bigfoot report, we have something that is along those lines instead, which doesn't necessarily speak to the nature of the animal itself, whatever that means. So,
Mm,
yeah, and the more and more I've looked, talk about synchronicity.
mm.
It's incredible how many parallels there are to the African great apes. It's gotten to a point for me where it feels ridiculous how many similarities we have. I've been doing a study recently,
Wow.
studying alleged Sasquatch handprints. I actually have a copy right here of the Freeman handprint, and
Oh, cool, dude.
yeah,
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
there are
Nice.
tons of other handprints that look like the Freeman handprint. Is the weird thing about it. So there's a
Man,
kind of
that is huge.
pattern. And one thing I've don't want to say discovered, but that I've noticed, we'll say, is that aside from the massive size and the kind of deep set palm, the thumb is interesting because the thumb bends so far down from the rest of the hand, and you can't, that's really hard to do with a human hand. That's about as
That's
far as I can go.
crazy, man.
Yeah. So and I thought, what could that be for? Because it doesn't make any sense. And I found something recently that made sense. So, you have the stories of rock clacking or picking up large sticks,
Yep.
fighting other animals. So you have something that would need a big hand, but it also would need a thumb with a very wide range of motion. And there's actually a name for that. We have half of that. Our hand is based on, our thumb, I should say, is based on two primary factors. One is called a power grip and one's called a
Mhm.
precision grip. A precision grip is for pinching things, like that's what we use when we're sewing, for instance. We use a precision grip. A power grip, so the pinching is what is the range of motion towards our fingers, up and down, let's say. Whereas the power grip deals more with in and out motion, which is what we see on Sasquatch hands, so that it can go quite out.
Okay.
And power grip is meant for picking up large objects like stones.
Mm.
It's specifically adapted for that. So when I found that, I thought, of course it has that thumb then,
Sure.
because its main reported method of communication is the use of objects instead of vocalization.
Yeah, exactly. That makes sense.
So it's adapted for doing that, it seems, or at least this hand model would be adapted for doing that. And we have, facial expressions. I can't even begin to say how many parallels Native American masks of Sasquatch and Zonaquah, for instance, have with known great ape facial expressions. Panthoot faces, the ones where the lips are
That's
pursed
true.
outward.
Yeah.
There's a report from the 80s where someone was a kid at the time and said, I told my parents that I saw this ape man that quote unquote smiled like he was going to attack me. And I thought that makes no sense. Like, a smile is a non-aggressive display, except in chimpanzees.
Exactly. Because you don't mess with that. Yep.
Yeah. The fear grin, which basically says, I'm feeling pretty anxious around you, so don't try anything, is basically
exactly. Oh, man.
Yeah. And that's the tip of the iceberg. There's wood knocking observed in apes. There is rock clocking observed in apes. There is everything that Bigfoot has been reported to do is found in specifically the African great apes.
That's rocking, dude. Like,
Yeah, it's crazy.
good on you for. There's not a lot of people talking about that right now. I'm putting that together, and I think that's really good that you are able to, like, I've had, actually, I just interviewed Kai, and he was like, all these people that think Bigfoot is a great ape, why aren't they looking into actual great apes? And it's like, well, there's one guy that is, so good for you, man.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Is there something that I should ask you that maybe I don't know enough, or I don't know you well enough to ask you?
Sure.
Is there anything? Yeah.
Oh, well, something that I would suggest that you ask me.
Yeah.
I don't know about that one.
Oh, you're good, because this question hits about 5% of the time, so you are absolutely okay.
Okay. Yeah, I wouldn't know.
That's no problem. Okay, no problem. What are you most excited about right now? This could be anything.
What am I most excited about right now? Well, I was talking with Eli Watson and Alexander a bit about this last night, actually.
Okay.
And as someone who is convinced of the existence of a North American great ape that we don't know about yet,
right,
I think that we're heading towards something big soon.
I hope so.
I don't know how soon? Maybe it's 20 years, maybe it's 40 years, but I think something really significant is coming, because if you look at the course of the last 100 years or so, you have this trajectory where things are pretty superficial at first, and they become more intriguing as time goes on. So more reports, or more discovery of artifacts that have these faces.
Okay.
And, the establishment of the Sasquatch as a Native American culture factor. And then you get into the 21st century. And I would even argue it begins maybe in the 70s with the Sierra Sounds. But you get into, and of course, the Patterson Gimlin film is probably where this really starts. But then you get into the 21st century, and you have two different DNA studies that are the only ones that we have that have been not debunked for the Sasquatch base. There's only two of them.
Yep.
And they both point to something in the Pan genus. So something that is in the same family as chimpanzees and bonobos, but is not a chimpanzee or bonobo. And that is indicated in both the Monster Quest DNA tissue samples, which said this is mostly human, except it has one difference in the structure that we find in chimps, not humans. And the Expedition Bigfoot DNA, investigated by UCLA, with the report that came back that said this didn't dance around it. This is pan genus DNA. We don't think it's chimpanzee or bonobo, but it's pan. So we're going to further. We have that. I mean, we have the Olympic project's nests.
And, yeah, dude, there's a lot going on, man.
Yeah,
it's wild.
It just seems as though it's coming to a head, and I don't know what it will be. I'm assuming that what it would be, instead of being a body or a specimen, let's say, would probably be one more, or maybe two more, three more, however many it takes, DNA samples, and one of them is peer-reviewed by enough labs to really come forth to academia, to all the scientists that are not aware of this, and say, most of us agree that this is an unknown primate. Take a look at it. Here you go. You'll find the same thing. We need to decide what to do about that, because it's no longer reliable. This is the case.
Right.
I think that that's probably what we're going to see within the next 100 years.
That would be awesome, dude. That would be rocking.
That would be very land. That would be the zoological discovery of the century.
That totally would be, man. Oh, yeah. I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
What are the top books that someone getting into Bigfoot should have on their bookshelf?
Let me give you two examples right here.
Okay.
Actually.
Awesome.
All right. Let's see. We got, these two will do.
All right.
So one of them is by someone who I, in a strange way, I guess, consider my mentor, even though I never met him. I'm a student, I would say, of Dr. Don Vindernagel. May he rest in peace.
Yeah, exactly.
His book, North America's Great Ape, the Sasquatch, is
that book's hard to get, dude.
It is.
It's crazy, man.
The ones that are in circulation are expensive. Let me tell you that.
They are, dude. Yeah.
But I was able to get a copy, and
good for you.
It is for everyone who says, well, I just don't see people bringing up correlations between primates and Bigfoot, even though they always say it. This is the book that started that.
That's
I don't
it.
know
Okay.
if
All right.
Bindernagel knew how deep that really went, but he was aware that he was onto something with that, I think. And
Nice.
all of this is anatomical description and primate behavior analysis, essentially. So wonderful book, one of the best cryptozoology books ever written. And I mean that.
Awesome.
The other one that I recommend is the Bigfoot Film Journal by Christopher Murphy. And this
is a new one. No one's brought this one up yet, dude.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
I would say that this is the deepest literary analysis of the Patterson-Gimlin film probably in existence, because all it is an analysis of the situation itself and of the footage. And it's so cool because it goes more into the actual situation, because everyone hears about the footage all the time. Everyone hears about the anatomical description, the Jeff Meldrum's thing with the bending feet towards the top of the foot, the right angle of the knee, the trapezius muscles, the jiggle in the leg when she steps. But the situation surrounding it is so much more interesting, especially for someone who is convinced of the Patterson-Gimlin film. This book has come the closest out of anything else to completely flipping my opinion on it, because the situation around it really, and I think Patterson said it himself, this couldn't have happened to a worse pair of people. Because,
yeah.
because there's a bunch of shady shit going on. Excuse my language, but
no, that's fine, dude. Like oh man, Android needs Clubhouse really quick, because you would have rocked our discussion on the Patterson-Gimlin film. Like, that came up a lot, where it was like, dude, it happened. Well,
I was telling Eli this last night.
Yeah.
For all of the anatomical stuff that really just screams, not a suit, not a suit, not a suit. There's one thing about the situation so far that just really is like,
okay,
not good. And it's that Roger Patterson, the morning that him and Bob went to Bluff Creek, went to Bluff Creek briefly before Bob woke up.
Oh, I hadn't heard that.
And we don't know why. We do not know why he did that. And of course, the first thought is, oh my God, he went to convene with the guy in the suit. But there's other explanations that, reconnaissance of the area. Can we actually climb these hills that they're trying to climb here?
Right.
He's making a film during this. He's probably getting B-roll in all reality. But we don't know that, because it is possible that he was convening with the person in the suit. So
at the end of the day, it's wild. We're talking about it like almost 60 years later, right?
Yeah.
50 some odd years. It's wild, dude.
That's the thing, right? Is that it's if you want any testament to the Roger statement, this could not have happened to two worse people. It's that we're still talking about this 60 years after it happened.
Right.
So
it's wild, dude.
Yeah, very wild. So I recommend both of those books highly.
Is that is the film one, is that on Amazon, or like, is that one a hard one to find? Or
so I get all of my books off of Thrift Books. It's an app that I really recommend. It's for used books. It's super cheap most of the time. I mean, I got this for $5.
Really? Thriftbooks.com, is that it?
Yeah, it's an app too that you can get for your phone as well. And you can have what's called a wish list. And what a wish list does is it catalogs a book that you've put in there, and it notifies you when there's some in stock.
I'm doing that tonight, dude.
Yeah, go for it. There's plenty of cryptozoology stuff on there. There's still some stuff that I'm waiting on. There's Aaron books that I'm looking into. There's Jersey Devil.
I'm gonna be so mad. How did you get the Bindernagel book from there?
Technically, yes. That was actually a gift from somebody, because
fair enough.
I'm a bit of a penny pincher, and I was like, I want to spend $80 on it, but I'm so scared to know what me $80 in the hole would look like. So
because I was gonna be like, if you got that for $2, then good for you. But man,
no, it's expensive. Whoa. I think
that is an expensive one.
Like $100 or so. So
yeah, totally.
Yeah,
very cool. I'm gonna check that out tonight. What are your thoughts on Mothman?
Talked about this last night too. That's one thing. If Tobias Wayland and Emily Wayland happened to watch this, that's one regret that I have, not about being on your podcast, but about what I said on the podcast, because they asked me about Mothman and the whole Men in Black connection, And I was
Yeah.
at a point where I was still trying to articulate the fact that I didn't know what to do with that information, so they shouldn't ask me, sort of thing.
Okay. Yeah.
But instead I said, well, there's the cryptid archetype theory where, so the cryptid archetype theory, Carl Jung, one of the best psychologists who ever lived,
Okay.
mid 20th century was mainly where all his work happened. Cataloged the psychological phenomenon interpretation of archetypes, which are repeating ideas throughout cultural mythologies, essentially like that.
Hmm.
Images that are found in every culture, like the wild man is an archetype.
True. Yeah.
The old man who guides the hero is an archetype. We have Obi-Wan
Mhm.
Kenobi. That's
Yep.
that's him. And that's in Greek culture, that's in African cultures, that's everywhere. And you also have the winged humans as an archetype.
Mm.
Carl Jung was probably the first person to ever catalog his experience with. It's the only example I think we have that is definitively the cryptid archetype in action, because
Wow.
he would have these serious psychological breakdowns throughout his life because he had several neurological issues, but he had
Okay.
the fortitude to actually describe in writing and study himself during it, which is what made him one of the greatest psychologists who ever lived. And
Wow.
in one of the experiences, and this only got published recently because this was such a controversial piece of his book, he experienced a vision of a winged man who Carl Jung interpreted as some kind of conjuring of his psyche.
Mm.
And of course, you have winged men throughout all cultures. And the first thing that you think of when you think of that is, well, under what conditions does someone see that kind of thing, and can Mothman be explained by that? And the
Mm.
answer is,
Wow.
I would say, maybe in the minority of cases.
Okay.
But I don't think in the majority of them. I don't know what people were seeing. Giant owl doesn't explain many of these things.
Right, giant eye. Yeah.
As much as I would like it
no.
to, because
No.
that would make a lot of sense. But
Yeah.
people like Doug Hychek's sighting or Jeff Meldrum sighting, it's like, I don't know what to do with those. I really don't. I really don't. I don't know what I think of the Mothman. I think that it was real, but I don't know what it is. So to ask me if it's real would be, well, what do you mean by it? Is the question, I think. And
yeah,
I don't know. I don't know the
Fair
answer.
enough. Fair enough.
Yeah.
No one's ever done the connection between Carl Jung
and the Mothman.
That's pretty cool. I like that. That'd be a rocking book. What are your concerns about Dogman, or what do you think about Dogman?
I think of Dogman in somewhat the same way as the Mothman. Although Dogman, I tend to be like, well, I suppose you could biologically explain Dogman. You could. I'm not sure how soundly one could, but you could.
Right.
Right. I'm working on this web series right now called The Man-Wolf Files with Eli Watson and Ryan Paul Tremblay, actually. And The Man-Wolf Files.
That's like an awesome, it's like an awesome, Adult Swim Cartoon Network series.
The Man-Wolf Files.
The Man-Wolf Files, dude. I love that. That's so cool.
Yeah,
that's gonna rock.
It's an analytical series, so instead of like boots on the ground looking for Dogmen, what we do instead is we cover a new alleged piece of evidence every episode, and in most of these we debunk them. And there are some pretty big cases that get debunked in this series. So there's a lot of using Photoshop recreations and comparing the images using an online image comparer.
Oh, awesome.
The exact percent that those images are similar. Looking into when images actually first pop up on the internet. Can you find the source image for this photo? Is there a version of this Dogman photo where there's no Dogman in this photo? And for a few of those, that's exactly the case.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, dude.
And before the Dogman one pops up. So, and you can date that stuff on the internet, so.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That's, I think particularly that's the season 1 finale that we have is one where the first thing I did was, let's throw this thing into a reverse image search, which
totally
to date how old the image was. What I found instead, the first picture that came up was the picture without the Dogman. And I was like, okay, we need more material. Case closed already. Yeah. So and
that is
we're
so
hoping
good.
We have production about halfway done on that right now.
Okay.
This episodes we have 4 finished, so we're hoping to get that out soon. Yeah,
dude, that's gonna be awesome. maybe make a really cool T-shirt too. The Man Wolf Files. I love
Maybe I
it.
should do that. We have a sticker
Maybe.
thing. It's like a little police badge that says Man Wolf Files
Oh my
Investigator
goodness,
on
I
it.
love it, dude.
Yeah.
Um, do you think there's a possibility of living dinosaurs currently, or what are your thoughts on that? That's a tough one, isn't it?
I'll say somewhat.
Okay.
I can't close the door on it because
Yeah,
there's
I
some
know.
cases where I'm just like, dude, that's too weird.
Yep.
One of them is the Beringer, which is this Tyrannosaurus-like cryptid from Australia. And
Oh yeah, sure.
yeah, well, here's one thing, right? One of the biggest counter arguments, and really one of the best ones, I would say, against the Beringer is, well, we have no evidence of any theropods anywhere near that size in Australia. The biggest we had was Megaraptor, and that's like, a 6 foot tall velociraptor. It's not that big. And then you have a discovery from last year. And it was the first theropod found in Australia that was the size of a Tyrannosaurus Rex.
Snap.
And for all we know, it's the only one.
Wow.
So that doesn't even connect necessarily to the Beringer, but sometimes you have things that happen and you're like, okay, at the very least, we need to update the conversation after finding this out. We can no longer say that there's no fossil precedent for the Beringer. There's this particular video. I cover this in a Beringer video on my channel called Footprints in the Sand. And it's this video that was not even Beringer related. I know it sounds like a Christian rock song or something. And
it's so good.
It's this forest being shown by Aborigines, these footprints in the sand. They're not fossilized, they're in sand.
Wow.
And I mean, they're theropod footprints. They're either it's a dinosaur or it's a new form of moa that is the size of a dinosaur that we did not know.
Oh man. Oh yeah.
And they're in the sand. They're in a material that wipes away by, with the wind. So these are possibly only a few hours old. And that's like, what do you do with that? What do you do with that?
That's wild.
Yeah, and I don't know what to do with that. It's a controversial subject, but things like that and Mokele and Mbembe, I would say, are the two where I'm like,
yep.
That's weird. And people are like, oh, well, yes, the natives talk about sauropods, but they say it has like spikes on its back. There is one sauropod we know of that had spines on its back, and it was native to Africa in roughly the modern day Congo area.
Yep.
So it's like,
yep. Dude, that's wild. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm completely, I don't know what to say about it, but whenever people bring it up and kind of ridicule it, I have to say, well, there's more to it than that. I don't know if it means anything, but there's more to it than that. So I'll say I leave the door open pretty consistently for that.
I love that. Lastly, what do you consider the top evidence for Bigfoot?
The top evidence for Bigfoot. There's not any public photos of them yet, but there's going to be soon with this new Small Town Monsters thing. The nests that the Olympic Project has are.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, I got you, dude. Yeah.
They're pretty crazy. And I can't say that.
Yeah. Don't make me edit this, dude.
Don't worry.
Carrick, don't make me edit it. I'm so close.
Okay. So we'll say aside from those, the Expedition Bigfoot DNA, which is the one that recently just said, yep, this is Pan. There's no way around it. This is Pan. We don't think it's chimpanzee bonobo. We're going to do more tests to make sure it's not, but we're pretty sure it's not. So you have that. There's a particular piece of footage aside from the Patterson film that I think is also highly significant. Found on Thinker Thunker's channel, who I actually would not recommend because it's kind of gone a confirmation bias direction since then. But this was a couple years ago when that was not the case.
Okay.
And it's footage from, I think, Alberta, Canada. Logging, I think, actually. And you can hear people in the beginning talking like, oh my God, what is that thing? And they point at the camera and they're like, who the hell is that? They say, who? Like, what is that? Who's that person? What are they doing?
Yeah.
And if you put it in the video and, up to contrast, you can see it. It's in the fog, so it's hard to, but you can actually see it. It's this person-shaped, lump. It's animate. It's moving. It's black. And suddenly it winds back. You can see the arm go like this. It winds back and it hucks what appears to be a tree that is about 7 times its torso's length.
Oh, I know that.
One
Yes, yes.
hand. Yes.
I know this
With
one.
hand. This isn't a Highland game where he's, holding it and he's running
Yeah.
up. There's no
This is a
run up.
good one.
There is no
Yep.
two-handed run up. There is stationary, picks up tree, winds back, throws it. We're talking King Kong in the opening of Godzilla versus Kong, where he
Yeah,
picks
totally.
up tree and just hucks it. And it's the
Oh,
same
man.
thing. So you tell me who was throwing that thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's probably the second best evidence after the Patterson film. Honestly, I think that's the
Dude.
second best.
That is so good. Man, I love the answers to those questions. You
Thank
did very well with those, dude. Carrick, this has been like super, super fun talking to you tonight. Thank you so much for coming on. What are the main ways that people can keep up to date with what you are doing? What do you usually say for people to do?
Well, for updates on things, I usually do Facebook.
Okay.
I'm still keeping up the Crash Course Cryptozoology channel. Those things are kind of connected, but they're mainly different entities at this point. So
Sure.
I would say if you want to keep up to date with major projects, check out the Facebook page, Crash Course Cryptozoology Research and Education.
Yep.
But I would recommend the channel a lot because I'm trying to kind of, I would like to be an educational program on this subject, and that's more important to me than anything else. As if people have watched like the Ropin video that I just did instead of Wild Man of the Wampanoag, that is maybe
the comments in that video are wild.
They are
because dude, I'm not gonna spoil it. It's like, go watch that video and then go in the comments.
John Whitcomb came out of the woodwork to comment.
That's what I'm saying. I didn't want to come out and say it, but I was like, oh, that's the guy.
Which is fascinating to me because I've talked with Eli about this and we've laughed at this so many times. John Whitcomb, I thought had been off the radar for a while. And considering, how long he's been in this and how old he is, if you put a gun to my head and asked me, I would have said, I think John Whitcomb died. So it was surprising for me when he came out of the woodwork because I was like, dude, I thought you were dead.
He's very much alive and commenting on your Ropin video like crazy. Like, it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, fascinating stuff. Really fascinating stuff. So yeah.
It's very cool. Yeah, definitely subscribe to that YouTube channel. Join the group. There's a lot of good. It's one of my favorite groups to get info from. So you're definitely doing good work there.
I encourage you watching this podcast because this is a really good podcast. It's not watched enough. It's got great interviews. Keep watching this, please.
Thanks, Carrick. That means a ton. Who knows what the future will bring? I'll just say that. But it's gotten me through 2020. Hey. Thank you so much for coming on. Carrick is going to hang out a little bit after this, share some extra stories for the Patreon members. You can support the podcast for $5 a month. Patreon.com/Bigfoot Society helps out a lot. But thank you so much for coming on again, Carrick.
Of course.